The church in America is going to suffer so terribly. And we laugh now, but they will come after us, and they will come after our children. They will close the net around us while we are playing soccer mom and soccer dad, while we are arguing over so many little things and mesmerized by so many trinkets. The net even now is closing around you and your children and your grandchildren, and it does not cause you to fear. You will be isolated from society, as has already happened. Anyone who tries to run for office who actually believes the Bible will be considered a lunatic until finally we are silenced. We will be called things that we're not and persecuted not for being followers of Christ, but for being radical fundamentalists who do not know the true way of Christ, which of course is love and tolerance. You'll go down as the greatest bigots and haters of mankind in history. They've already come after your children, and for most of you, they got them. They got them through the public schools and indoctrination and the university and indoctrination, and then you wonder why your children come out not serving the Lord. It's because you fed them right into the devil's mouth. So little by little the net is closing around, and then it's not little by little. Look how fast things are going downhill just in a matter of weeks. But at the same time, know this: persecution is always meant for evil, but God always means it for good. And is it not better to suffer in this life, to have an extra weight of glory in heaven? You must settle this in your mind. This is the one thing I want to say over and over. Down through history, you have a wrong idea of martyrdom and persecution. You think that these men were persecuted and martyred for their sincere faith in Jesus Christ. That was the real reason, but no one heard that publicly. They were martyred, and they were persecuted as enemies of the state, as bigots, as narrow-minded, stupid people who had fallen for a ruse and can contribute nothing to society. Your suffering will not be noble. So your mind must be filled with the Word of God when all people persecute you and turn on you. This is no game. You want revival and awakening, but know this: for the most part, great awakenings have come only preceding great national catastrophes or the persecution of the church. I believe God is bringing a great awakening, but I believe that He is raising up young men who are strong in trust in the providence of God to be able to wade through the hell that's going to break loose on us. And it will be on us before we even recognize it. Unless in God's providence, He is not done. He is not done.
So I think there are lots of interesting discoveries, biological, on Earth, and other discoveries in the heavens that those of you who are younger will get to see unfold. You'll have all kind of problems with them, but on balance it'll be a plus. And it'll make life much more interesting.
I do think, first of all, that there are a number of impersonal forces which are pushing in the direction of less and less freedom. And I also think that there are a number of technological devices which anybody who wishes to use can use to accelerate this process of going away from freedom, of imposing control.
We have 300 million pattern recognizers in the neocortex by my estimate. That hierarchy we build ourselves, that each of these pattern recognizers is capable of connecting itself to other neocortexes. To build this hierarchy, we build that hierarchy from the moment we're born or before that. We're going to put these gateways, this is a gateway to the cloud. We're going to put gateways to the cloud in our brains and have more than 300 million.
This threat is not new. But technology and the internet increase its frequency and, in some cases, its lethality. Today, a person can consume hateful propaganda, commit themselves to a violent agenda, and learn how to kill without leaving their home.
see virtual reality as a way not of escaping any notion of empirical reality, but as a way of reportraying invisible levels of the given world that are very vital and important to us.
Now I'm going to get into the great tree of knowledge and the wisdom that has been denied us by someone who does not want us to have this knowledge. Who this someone is, I don't know. I wish I did. You know, John Lash, the great Nag Hammadi scholar, he says the Nag Hammadi texts, which were found 2,000 years ago in Egypt, or they were buried 2,000 years ago in Egypt and found in 1947. And what's great about the Nag Hammadi is they haven't been tainted by anyone. No pope, no politician, no historian has rewritten anything in there. So we're reading exactly what they wanted us to read 2,000 years ago. Okay? Nobody's got their meat on it. No spin. The Nag Hammadi says that about 1,600 years ago before them, or about 3,600 years ago, the earth was invaded by something called the Archons, which is close to the Anunnaki. And they don't say they're beings. They describe it more like a virus, an off-planet virus. And these Archons came, and what these Archons are is they do not possess the divine essence that we possess. And they're really jealous of us for that. And so they're creating a world, this is what the Nag Hammadi says, a simulated world all around us. It's all simulated. And what it is, it's trying to show that they can create everything that the God has created, the beautiful earth and the flowers and everything. They can do just as good a job as nature can do, only they do it fake. And the point of the Archons, according to Nag Hammadi, is to make you think that their reality is the reality, not the real reality. So I suspect that's who told us we can't have the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Because once you understand what is going on here, you can free yourself of the Archons. And I believe the Archons are here. And I believe they're everywhere. And I think they are a virus.
Atlantis, Mu, Arcadia, the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone. They all share a similar fable of something lost sought to be regained. According to the ancient mystery religions, the Garden of Eden was not a physical location on Earth, but quite literally a spiritual dimension synonymous to the heavens above. Moreover, it was believed that the sacred stone responsible for the mysterious qualities to mind and matter also came from this enigmatic point in time and space. In Celtic mythology, an immortal named Arthur of Camelot will one day return at some future time from the Isle of Avalon. Avalon in Welsh means apple, giving rise to the false notion that the fruit from the forbidden tree of knowledge, which God forbid Adam and Eve to eat, was in fact an apple. In Greek mythology, Apollo is known as the god of knowledge and light, wisdom and divination, music and medicine, and even prophecy. In the Hellenistic period, he became known as the Titan, god of the sun. His twin sister Artemis was known as Selene, or the moon goddess. The book of Acts mentions what the city of Ephesus believed to be the origin of Artemis. Quote, "And when the town clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, 'Men of Ephesus, who is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is temple keeper of the great Artemis, and of the sacred stone that fell from the sky?'" The Muslim Kaaba stone is yet another creation myth that mentions a sacred stone which fell from heaven to earth. The stone was thought to be a fragment of the first paradise. Islamic author Ibn Abbas states, quote, "Muhammad said, 'Indeed, the Islamic teaching of the origin of Adam say that the paradise in which he lived and was subsequently expelled was not even on the earth.'" According to historian Rundle Clark, the Egyptian creation myth mentions a stone that fell from heaven called the Benben stone. This stone was believed to bring the vital essence of life from what is called the Isle of Fire. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, believed to have been written by Thoth, the father of alchemy, tells of the place where the life essence of humanity originates, Neter Kurt, which means island or mountain of God. The mysterious regenerative qualities of the stone have also been long associated with the rising phoenix, which has its connections with the ancient city of Phoenicia, otherwise known as Sidon or Tyre. The city of Tyre is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, where the king of Tyre is overlaid with the description of Satan, who had fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. It is evident that with this brief survey of ancient creation myths, these occult traditions have forever been the common thread between the practices of esoteric spirituality like alchemy, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah, but also of the secret orders such as the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and even the Illuminati. The late Christian prophecy author David Flynn summarized, quote, "The common thread within most ancient creation stories was the union of the celestial and terrestrial at a particular time of unparalleled upheaval and change. The marriage of heaven and earth gave birth to the worldwide legends of the gods who descended from the heavens."
Well, alchemy is actually one of the most ancient of the sacred sciences. Its origins are stretching far back into history. In the terms of the alchemists themselves, alchemy was the transformation and transmutation of metals. But in a broader sense, this transformation takes place on all different levels, not just a physical level, but mental and spiritual levels, and not just for metals, but for all creatures. All of creation is going through this process of transformation. One alchemist described alchemy as celestial agriculture.
Oh my gosh.
And this is a sense that everything in nature is alive and transforming, going through a process of development. Frater Albertus described alchemy as a process of consciously assisted evolution, where the operator himself is consciously involved in his own evolution.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot more than the commonly held belief that it's transmuting base metals into gold. If you look in the dictionary, that's the standard definition for alchemy, turning lead into gold. But there's quite a bit more to it than just that.
Mm-hmm. And can you go into a little more depth about the origin of alchemy?
The origins of alchemy are lost to history. Most of the scholars will agree that alchemy in the Western tradition began in ancient Egypt, possibly 10, 12,000 years ago. According to ancient legends and stories, even back then, alchemy had a divine origin. There was a race of spiritually ascended people who walked the earth and taught mankind the arts of civilization. And even in ancient times, there were fantastic stories that God taught it to Adam, later to Moses and Abraham, fallen angels taught it to human women in exchange for sexual favors, and these were in ancient times. In more recent times, it's been proposed that this was a technology that stems from Atlantean technology, that aliens brought it to Earth. But if you follow the thread of history itself, somewhere in ancient Egypt there was a sacred science. It was called the divine art. And that was the origins of alchemy, and you can actually follow the processes through the various priesthood who kept this as a secret science, and it was passed along from generation to generation under oaths of secrecy. It was developed as a secret science and very closely guarded secrets.
The origin of alchemy is as mysterious as the practice itself, but its influence has been vital to human civilization. Alchemy, through the sacred arts, has been part of ancient Egypt, the mystical Jewish practice of Kabbalah, Zoroastrianism, Christian Gnosticism, mystical factions of Islam, Chinese mysticism, the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, the Golden Dawn, and even the Illuminati. Up until philosophical materialism became the main proponent of the scientific worldview, alchemy, as a main branch of the Hermetic arts, was the foundation for all scientific and technological inquiry. In fact, it is through the philosophical tradition of Hermeticism that inspired many scientific and technological breakthroughs throughout recorded human history. A.E. White, a 20th century British scholarly mystic who was the first to attempt a scholarly study of Western occultism, found that, quote, "The earliest extant work of alchemy which is as yet known in the West is the Papyrus of Lead, which was discovered at Thebes. The practices exposed in this papyrus are the same as those of the oldest Greek alchemists, such as Pseudo-Democritus, Zosimus, Olympiodorus, and Pseudo-Moses. This demonstration is of the highest importance for the study of the origins of alchemy. It proves it to have been found on something more than purely chimerical fancies. It is impossible to separate the Lead papyrus from a close relationship with its context of other papyri, as admitted by Berthelot, who said, "The history of magic and Gnosticism is closely bound up with that of the origin of alchemy, and the alchemical papyrus of Lead connects in every respect with two in the same series which are solely magical and Gnostic."
It's interesting, though, we now know for sure from declassified Central Intelligence Agency documents that Jerry Garcia was working for the CIA.
Absolutely.
Spreading all this LSD and drugs to everybody, encouraging the kids to think about necromancy and communication with the dead, promoting the drug revolution. He was a CIA operative.
Yes.
Isn't that an amazing thing? You know, so some people who worship Jerry Garcia, seems to be their anti-establishment, but he was par excellence establishment.
People hate to hear that.
What a deceit we have in America today.
It is so subtle, and it's all around us. It's like, I mean, the Brotherhood is the filter that the stars rise up through. So here we have Demi Moore. And of course, she was a rising star.
Yeah.
And she just had a Kabbalistic wedding.
Yeah, she is a Kabbalist.
Well, have a look at this clip. Play this clip, Shag.
Always, it seems, something about to blow up around Madonna, which brings us to the latest controversy. Her new documentary, I'm going to tell you a secret. Clearly, her belief in Kabbalah, the study of Jewish mysticism, has deeply affected her. Is the young woman who once so publicly rejected the Catholic faith of her childhood now Jewish?
You attend Jewish services now. Well, that's what some people think. I don't attend Jewish services. Straighten us out. Well, I hear the Torah, but I'm not Jewish, and nor have I converted to Judaism. I think I'm connecting to something that predates religion.
According to occult author Manly P. Hall in his infamous book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, it states, quote, "Early initiates of the Kabbalistic mysteries believed that its principles were first taught by God to a school of his angels before the fall of man. The angels later communicated the secrets to Adam, so that through the knowledge gained from an understanding of its principles, fallen humanity might regain its lost state. The angel Raziel was dispatched from heaven to instruct Adam in the mysteries of the Kabbalah. Different angels were employed to initiate the succeeding patriarchs in this difficult science." Most esoteric authors believe that the origin of alchemy and the knowledge of the mysteries originate in ancient Egypt, in particular from a deity named Thoth, who later became known as Hermes Trismegistus. Garth Fowden, in his book, The Egyptian Hermes, A Historical Approach to the Late Pagan Mind, states, quote, "Thoth was among the most diverse and popular of all the Egyptian gods. In particular, Thoth was regarded even in the most primitive period as the moon god. Thoth came to be regarded as the origin both of cosmic order and of religious and civil institutions. He presided over almost every aspect of the temple cults, law, and the civil year, and in particular over the sacred rituals, texts, and formulae, and the magic arts that were so closely related. To him, as divine scribe, inventor of writing, and lord of wisdom, the priesthood attributed much of its sacred literature, and of the occult powers latent in all these aspects of the cult of the gods, Thoth was the acknowledged source. By extension, he came to be regarded as the lord of knowledge, language, and all science, even as understanding or reason personified. The influence of Thoth's later title, Hermes Trismegistus, has been the root of knowledge for the history of mankind. What is now referred to as the Hermetic Order and its outworking of Hermeticism has influenced some of the most familiar names, including Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Galileo, Kepler, Da Vinci, and Isaac Newton. Even Copernicus arrived at his revolutionary insights about the heliocentric solar system by mere, quote, including the hidden works of Thoth himself. In fact, Hermeticism is so influential that even the biblical method of hermeneutics comes from the same root, Hermes, the, quote, tutelary divinity of speech, writing, and eloquence.
Many ancient cultures, all around the world actually, talk about gaining knowledge from elsewhere. You know, ancient aliens, they're always talking about ancient aliens. Well, it's true. I mean, that part of it is anyway, that, you know, the people around the world claimed that they had received knowledge and understanding of how to build megalithic structures and things of that nature from elsewhere. Now, I don't believe that we're talking about astronauts, ancient astronaut theory. I don't buy that. We're not talking about people from the Pleiades or Arcturus or Orion or whatever. I believe we're talking about the archons. What are the archons? Well, you know, first of all, it's just a Greek word. You know, it's nothing mystical about it. The word archon just simply means chief, commander with authority. You know, ruler. You know, it's talking about a person in position of leadership. In the Book of Enoch, we see that 200 Watcher-class angels landed on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. And among those 200, we are given a series of names, about 20, 21 names. These would be the archons of the 200. These would be the leaders of the 200. And, you know, the Book of Enoch tells you, you know, point blank, that these angels taught men a whole lot of things, you know, like Azazel or Azazel taught men the art of digging up the metals of the earth and, you know, creating weapons of warfare, among other things. You know, so we've got a detailed description right there in the Hebrew, you know, extra biblical text of Enoch. But other cultures describe very similar things, that beings from elsewhere came down and taught them stuff.
I would like to reiterate that I do not believe the Book of Enoch is inspired scripture, but as we look at this following quote through the context of alchemy, we will see that it was a vital part of the teachings. The Book of Enoch, chapter 8, verse 1, states, quote, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, and fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stones of every valuable and select kind, and of all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. If Hermes, by way of Thoth, is considered the god of knowledge and wisdom by the Egyptians and Hellenistic Greeks, then Azazel, the Watcher, would be the equivalent in the Book of Enoch. It is interesting to note that Azazel is mentioned 3 times in the Bible, all in the book of Leviticus. The word Azazel means scapegoat, or more specifically, entire removal. Later, in the book of Enoch, chapter 9, verse 6, it states, quote, "See then what Azazel has done, how he has taught all iniquity on the earth, and revealed the eternal secrets that are made in heaven." Then later, in chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, Enoch delivers a message of the fate of the watchers as appointed by God. Quote, "You will not have peace. A severe sentence has come out against you, that you should be bound, and you will have neither rest nor mercy, nor the granting of any petitions, because of the wrong which you have taught, and because of all the works of blasphemy and wrong and sin which you have shown to the sons of men." This reminds us of a passage we read in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. The possible connection between Azazel and Thoth is further realized when we consider the channeled writings of Dr. Doriel, a man who allegedly had connections to the Great White Lodge. He published the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean in 1925, not to be mistaken with the Emerald Tablet or the Smaradine Table that we will reference shortly. In these particular channeled writings, there is a passage that states, quote, "Know ye, O people amongst whom I walk, that I, Thoth, have all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom known to man since the ancient days. Keeper I have been of the secrets of the great race. Holder of the key that leads into fire. Bringer up have I been to ye, O my children, even from the darkness of the ancient of days." Here, Thoth, through Dr. Doriel, claims himself to be the father of mankind, calling us my children. He contrasts himself from the darkness of the Ancient of Days, a title for God in the book of Daniel. These clues are a dead giveaway of who is actually behind the identity of Thoth, or Azazel. However, the channelings don't end there. Dr. John Dee, who was a 16th century occultist, practiced alchemy and the sacred arts. He believed that the promise of immortality lied in the secrets held by the one the Bible says walked with God for 300 years and did not see death, for God took him. While the Bible emphasizes Enoch's unique faith in God, Dr. John Dee felt that it was Enoch's works that allowed him to walk with God and not see death. It would be a mistake to believe that Enoch's privileges were a result of any kind of magical workings or alchemical spells. So what drove Dr. John Dee to pursue such a lofty goal in the first place? Jeffrey James, an author and journalist who's written for Wired.com, the New York Times, among other mainstream media outlets, published a book called The Enochian Evocation back in 1984. This book was a modern translation of angelic communication originally transcribed by Dr. John Dee and his partner Edward Kelly as they gazed into crystal balls in 1582. These so-called angels told Dee that they must re-establish the magical sciences which had been lost due to man's wickedness. They also told Dee that the one who successfully harnesses these magical arts will bestow superhuman powers, change the political landscape, and bring about the apocalypse. Moreover, these so-called angels taught John Dee and Edward Kelly the language of the angels. In the 2009 Weiser edition of the Enochian Evocation of Dr. John Dee, author Jeffrey James wrote in his preface, quote, "I expected my book to be well received by the scholarly community. Instead, most of the interest in the Enochian evocation has come, as far as I can tell, from practicing occultists. Academics have, by contrast, virtually ignored it. The primary reason for the evident distaste among the ivy-colored professors is probably my assertion in the original introduction that the angelic, aka Enochian language, has characteristics suggesting that it has non-human origins. A completely new language that's non-human in origin. Yes, that's the kind of controversial statement that simply won't be tolerated among academics. I might as well clarify that statement not for their benefit, but simply for the historical record. While I believe that it's probably that the angelic language was devised by somebody, most likely Kelly, either consciously or subconsciously, non-human characteristics do exist in the language, and as such, provide the best proof that we're ever likely to see of the existence of non-corporal intelligence. Even if such beings are unlikely, the angelic language is still the only example of glossolalia, speaking in tongues, that involves a hitherto unknown language with its own grammar and syntax. This is a very different phenomenon from instances where entranced folks repeat languages they might have heard when a child, or in the case of Pentecostal Christianity, spout out whatever jibber-jabber comes to their heads. In other words, this book is important because it's the only publication, scholarly or otherwise, that fairly assesses the unique and possibly significant phenomenon of the angelic language and how it was dictated. Like all channeled material, it seemed that what Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly communicated with were fallen spirits, masquerading as angels of light in desperate pursuit of the agenda to manifest their leader, Lucifer.
You know, I think the same thing's happening in our day. You talk about the Nazis and, you know, how did they do what they do and build the rockets and all that stuff, and Wernher von Braun and others are, you know, they kind of smile at you and say, you know, we had help. Even Steve Jobs, you know, regarding the computers and stuff like that, you know, these people, they claim to have got inspiration, knowledge, wisdom, whatever, from elsewhere. And of course, you've got, you know, some of the theories that you see in the X-Files, that maybe our government is trading humans for knowledge and technology with the fallen ones. Could be. I mean, how else are we to explain the massive increase in technology, transportation, everything in the 20th century? I mean, we went from essentially a flat line for like 6,000 years. It was, you know, horse and buggy, beasts of burden for 6,000 years. So all of a sudden, planes, trains, automobiles, supposedly putting a man on the moon, sending probes to the farthest reaches of our solar system and beyond, and creating telescopes that could look to the farthest reaches of our universe. How did all that happen in less than 100 years? Unless maybe we had help.
If we observe the quickening pace of scientific and technological progress, along with the fact that such books as the Enochian Evocation being republished in our time, we can speculate that these fallen angels have been hard at work and are gaining ground very quickly. Another obscure account of the passing down of alchemical wisdom from spiritual beings is found in a document attributed to the 3rd century AD but found in the 11th century Codex Marcianus, entitled Isis, the Prophetess to her son Horus. The story is told through Isis, who is approached by an angel desiring sexual relations with her. Quote, "In the course of events and the necessary revolution of the spheres, and after a certain passing of the Chiroi, one of the angels who reside in the first firmament saw me from above and wanted to unite with me. He advanced, intending to arrive at his goal, but I refused to yield, wanting to learn from him the preparation of gold and silver. The next day, a greater angel named Amnael, who was identified with a mark on his forehead and a vase that was not covered with pitch, but rather full of transparent water, approached Isis. Isis first yielded to Amnael, asking in exchange for the knowledge of alchemy. Quote, "And when he delayed to answer, I did not yield a bit, but I resisted his desire until he let me see the sign which he had on his head, and transmitted to me without reserve and with sincerity the mysteries that I sought. At last, he showed me the sign and began the revelation of the mysteries. Offering oaths, he expressed himself this way: I adjure you to heaven, earth, light, and darkness. I adjure you by fire, water, air, and earth. I adjure you by the height of the heaven, by the depth of the earth and of Tartarus. I adjure you by Hermes, by Anubis, by the roaring of Kerberos, by the serpent who guards the temple. I adjure you by the ferry and by the boatman of the Acheron. I adjure you by the 3 fates, by the Furies, and by the sword." Amnael then warns Isis never to reveal the mysteries that were given except to her son Horus. What is alarming about this ancient account is that it is not unique to antiquity. Today, there are people who have publicly claimed to have sexual relations with angelic entities.
Stephanie Cohen. Stephanie claims that she is often visited by aliens who help to guide her through life. Not only does she claim aliens sneak into her room at night, she also says that she has sex with them and has out-of-this-world orgasms.
Professor Chris French, however, believes there is a rational explanation, and welcome to you both. This is utterly fascinating. And we should say, Stephanie, we're glad to have you here this morning because as you've been in this morning talking to us, last night, you travelled out to the solar system. Where did you go and how did you get there?
My group, I call them Team Spirit, and we have a UFO, flying saucer.
Yeah. And we've got a photo. No, it's not a photo.
It's a picture I drew.
This is a drawing that you've done, and this is the UFO that you went to.
Yeah, sure. We go off to planets within our own solar system, but also to way out into the solar system.
Do you go in mind or do you go in body?
In mind, because it happens when my physical body is asleep, but my spirit will then leave.
Could it be a dream? I mean, would that be what most people call dreaming?
A dream is a friendly way of letting you know what you've been doing without scaring you. Or that's what dreams really are, because people would be afraid to actually would be afraid if they were face to face with, say, an alien.
So the different species. Let's talk about them. These different beings. You say that there are cat people. There are reptilians. Are they all? They're all part of. They're not part of the same race. So these are separate.
No,
entities.
they're very separate, but they do come from the solar system that they come from, which is within the Canis Major.
So that's where they originate.
Yeah, they're different planets within the Canis Major system.
So you, I assume, have seen life and other civilizations on other planets.
Yeah.
And how prolific is life in the universe?
When you look up at the stars at night, that's how prolific it is.
Who is Ian the Octopus Man?
Yeah, he's an octopus man. He stays quite close to me, sort of like a spirit kind of boyfriend, but not really boyfriend. I don't call it boyfriend, just a good spirit friend. And he happens to be from the octopus race. I mean, all of them indulge in insects, but particularly the cat people are extremely highly charged sexually. It's part of our culture, the cat people culture.
If they're here now, and one of the greatest things, one of the greatest revelations for mankind would be one of these beings to manifest themselves right behind me now, why don't they show themselves?
Because then they're not into showing off. They're very quite reserved in themselves.
Well, they have sex with you at a bus stop. That's not very reserved.
No. What I mean is they don't show themselves to the world like that. They tend to deal on a personal level with individuals because we all have guides, our own guides, and they are my guides, and so they interact with me. If you wanted to see them, they would do that through your guides. Or your guides would allow them to come through so that you can see them.
Go on. But you had sex with a dead person.
Well, I had the dead person, the spirit came back and made love to me. And this is not an isolated incident. I can't tell you how many widows have written me, have called me, have thanked me for actually talking about this subject and writing about it with such candor and honesty. And as I was writing about it, I couldn't believe I was writing it, but I thought, you know what, somebody's got to talk about this.
These experiences are nothing more than the demonic entities taking advantage of humans at their most vulnerable moments, sleep. The male demons who seek sexual relations with human women are called incubus, while the female demons are called succubus. The earliest mention of demons or spirits mating with humans is found in the Sumerian account of what is called the Sumerian king list. There, a demigod, named Gilgamesh is said to be fathered by Lilu, which means spirit or demon. If you or someone you know are having such experiences, as positive as they may appear to be, please strongly consider the words of 1 John 4:1.
The only hope that we have in this is the real Jesus Christ, Jesus of the Bible. He's the only thing in the world that these beings are afraid of, and they are more than a little afraid of him. They are terrified of him. They shake, they tremble, they know that he has the authority to destroy them, and that he ultimately will destroy them. They are extremely conscious of this fact. You can see this in the Bible as well. Mark is a great book of the Bible. The first chapter talks about Jesus casts a demon out of a person that says, have you come to destroy us before our appointed time? That's what the demonic voice is saying. And later on in Mark chapter 5, we see that these beings are again terrified of him. They beg him, don't send us to the abyss. Jesus is our only hope in this, not just to scare these beings or to make them stop what they're doing, but also because he is the only way to essentially repair these doors. We can stop doing whatever we're doing, but it's not going to repair the doors. The protection barrier that we've destroyed or are slowly destroying, that's not going to just get better if you leave it alone. But he has the power to also restore that, and that is through an actual, real, supernatural Christianity. And I say it that way because a lot of people think Christianity is just sort of rules that you follow. But Christianity is a supernatural thing that happens to a person that changes their heart. It's no longer a chore to want to do good and to begin to hate evil, because it says that if any man is in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things pass away, all things become new. And that was something that happened in my life. It was something that I wasn't expecting. I thought Christianity was a bunch of rules. But when I really decided, okay, if Jesus is Lord, if he really says, like in the Bible, it says, all power has been given to me, in heaven and earth. If he is really Lord, then I'm going to make him number one in my life, in my heart anyway. I'm going to say that he's more important than all this other stuff. And it's that one little idea that changes everything. The idea that you will say, okay, I'm not the boss anymore, he's the boss. If I could just simplify what repentance is, that's it. It's the idea that you're going to say, all right, if he's the boss, then he's the boss in your heart. And it's in that moment that my life changed. I think what people call being born again, or what Jesus calls being born again in John chapter 3, that happened to me. And slowly, my heart started to change. And I wanted good things, and all these addictions and terrible things that I was doing were slowly just falling off me. I even tried to continue to do them, but I couldn't do them because I had a new heart.
Israel Regardie, a 20th century French occultist and writer who was Aleister Crowley's personal secretary and transcriptionist, wrote about alchemy in a document entitled The Philosopher's Stone, Spiritual Alchemy, Psychology, and Ritual Magic. Quote, "The alchemical and magical theories roughly amount to this. In the course of long aeons of time, nature has gradually evolved a complex mechanism of reaction, which we call man. Marvelous as this organism is in many ways, yet it manifests several defects. A stream cannot rise higher than its source, and without entering into the complicated and at first sight rather bewildering realm of alchemical cosmological theories, it is held that nature has fallen from a certain divine state, from grace as it were. Because of this condition of things, it is held that by herself and unassisted, nature cannot regain her former glorified condition of equilibrium. The great work of alchemy is to bridge the gap or veil that currently exists between the physical and spiritual realm." Another early 20th century author named Herbert Stanley Redgrove, in a book entitled Alchemy, Ancient and Modern, stated, quote, "The famous axiom beloved by every alchemist, what is above is as that which is below, and what is below is as that which is above. And later, Redgrove quotes from the Smaradine Table, also known as the Emerald Tablet, which according to Albert Magnus was found in the tomb of Hermes by Alexander the Great. On the tablet was inscribed 13 lines, one of which read, quote, "Ascend with the greatest sagacity from the earth to the heaven, and then again descend to the earth, and unite together the powers of things superior and things inferior. Thus you will obtain the glory of the whole world, and all obscurity will fly far away from you." We will explore the veil in detail later in the film as it pertains to the Tower of Babel, hallucinogenic drugs, and the eventual tearing down of the veil with the return of Jesus Christ. For now, it is important to understand that the goal of alchemy is to gain back what was once lost, not through any means of grace, as the gospel of Jesus Christ teaches, but rather through the works of our own hands. It is this occult spiritual philosophy of regeneration through the enigmatic stone that fell from heaven that lies at the heart of modern scientific and technological progress in pursuit of human immortality.
Let's go back to Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, the serpent's there in the garden, right, with Eve, and, you know, he's tempting her, you know, with the fruit, and he says, "You're not going to die. You will not surely die. For God doth know that in the day that you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil," right? So, what do we see there? We see three promises of the serpent. He says, immortality, right? You're not going to die. Your eyes will be open, you'll have greater wisdom and understanding and knowledge, right? And you shall be as the gods. You know what's funny about those three? Adam and Eve already had them. Adam and Eve already had those three. They were already immortal. Death didn't come until after they took a bite. Their eyes open, having greater wisdom and understanding. I mean, come on, they walked in the garden with God, the creator of the universe. It's kind of like, you know, hey God, how did the Milky Way get there? Well, let me tell you, Adam. I mean, how much more wisdom and understanding do you need than walking in the garden with God every day, the creator of the universe, right? And you shall be as gods. They already were. They were made in the image and likeness of God. So the three promises of the serpent, they already had. And they took a bite and they lost all three. And man has been trying to get it back ever since, apart from God. I think the real agenda of transhumanism is to get back the three things that humans lost in the garden, and to be like God. Achieve immortality apart from God, have supernatural ability, become the gods of the ancient world. You know, that's the agenda. That's what they're working on, and it's happening. It's happening very quickly, and we need to be aware of it.